Ary Rosenbaum here with another fun-filled episode of that 401k podcast. This week's topic, we're going to talk about the 401k Hunger Games for plan providers. Of course, first things first, go to that 401ksec.com. End of January, we got that free national virtual conference, which is January 29th to 30th. April, we got Wrigley Fields, which I'm looking forward to. And in May, we got Colorado, and hopefully we will have September for Washington, D.C. I got to work on Washington D.C. Finally booking the details and the dates and all that kind of stuff, and see where it's at. Washington will be kind of interesting to me personally. I think for the 10 people who bought Full Circle, Washington D.C. is where I went to law school, so it will be sort of for me. It's not my hometown, but when you spend 3 years in a place where it was a very trying time in my life to be in law school at that law school, and to come back and host an event. It's kind of like a homecoming in a sense. So I'm looking forward to that. I got a design logo change for that 401k conference just for Washington. It's very funny. I use Fiverr for the logos, and I think the only times we've ever made a change to the logo was, there was the national conference with the Disney ears. I did that. That was, of course, never hold an event the week that a worldwide pandemic is starting in the United States. And then I think we did one for Las Vegas. We did the New York. So I got something in mind for Washington. So for those people who like the logos, and sometimes it's interesting on my Facebook memories, I'll see logos of events that we didn't have. There have been several events that we did announce and we had to cancel it for one reason or another. For the history of it, we had 3 that we had to cancel for COVID that we redid, which would be St. Louis, Houston, Minnesota. I think we were going to book one for New Orleans. Actually, I never did we were going to do New Orleans. We didn't book, actually, we didn't make a logo for New Orleans because it was one of those things where it was at the Superdome, but it wasn't. It was outside the Superdome, and the dates didn't work out. The one I remember doing a logo for, and I just saw it was Charlotte. And I wanted to go to Charlotte, do it at the Panther Stadium, and unfortunately the soccer team, was it Charlotte FC or whatever the heck they're called, they couldn't keep the dates guaranteed for me because of, the playoffs. So you can't book an event and there's no guarantee that you're actually going to hold it. It doesn't work like that for me. You got to deal with your sponsors and your attendees and whatnot. And of course, Milwaukee got canceled because there was just a lack of interest. Apparently, there's a difference between people in Milwaukee and Chicago. People from Chicago can't sell in Milwaukee or something. It's just whatever it was. But go to that 401ksite.com. And then, of course, Amazon Full Circle is still out there on Kindle and paperback. And on January 6th, my 4th book, that 401k Plan Provider Handbook, will be coming out. You could pre-order it for Kindle. The paperback will come out the same day on January 6th. It's the 4th book. The cover page is something out of like Quentin Tarantino's, or the 9th film from Quentin Tarantino. So it's the 4th book from Ary Rosenbaum. The Plan Provider Handbook is just my 27 years of experience and how to develop a practice and things to do, and certainly things not to do. As a former employee for about 12 years, what to do and what not to do. So let's get to the topic at hand. Plan providers these days, it could be like the Hunger Games. Record keepers merge faster than tributes fall. Small TPAs have to dodge arrows labeled feed compression, and advisors are constantly trying to decide which alliance will keep them alive the longest. And so it's like the Hunger Games. First things first. Mergers are coming from inside the house. This business, especially since fee disclosure came out in 2012, it's just one merger or, one purchase after another. People are getting bigger. Uh, I always talk about a census. Years ago, I remember when it was BICIS because I worked for an attorney who was working with a TPA, and they sold their block of business to BICIS, and BICIS at the time did not have a very good reputation. They changed their name, became a census, and just became that much better as an organization. And they started gobbling up all these TPAs. Future plan and all that kind of stuff. And Empower certainly become the 900-pound gorilla in the room, and they're both fine plan providers. I can't say a bad thing about it, especially Empower. I do a lot of work with them, but you know, bigger isn't always better, and you know. Big platforms really just don't tell you that scale might reduce costs, but it doesn't fix service gaps. There's still room to compete on the small to mid-size level. There's independent TPAs, niche record keepers, and regional advisors still have something the giants, in the industry don't have, which is agility and relationships. When you are bigger, you want bigger revenue streams, and you're going to cut out parts of the business that don't provide the biggest revenue. It's the same way in the old days when TPAs would just get rid of the DB department. DB departments, balance forward departments, where it was not participant directed, 401k plans, they were very, very profitable. But they were not going to be as profitable as they had hoped as 401k. When I worked at Mobius Tech, well, I worked for a law firm with Mobius Tech, and one day, I was looking at Harvey Berman's table, and of course I'm talking out of school and things I'll admit to, 20 years after the fact, but I saw the income statement, or I think it was the income statement for Mobius Tech, which eventually got sold off to CBiz. And the most profitable part of the business was the balance forward plans. We were losing money on daily plans just because of the technology and whatnot, and just they didn't have enough business at the time to generate. And for the balance forward plans, it's an old part of the business. I think it's still profitable, but people want scale, and you can't get scale with trustee-directed plans. And so that's why they jettison it. And that's why a lot of the plan providers are going to prune when they do a merger, whatnot. They're going to prune the plans that don't pay as well. There's no high markup. That's just that's just how it is. I think there's still room for plan providers to improvise, to survive on brains and loyalty rather than budget and buzzwords. You need strategy to survive consolidation, and you can't really compete with Empower on their resources, but you can outthink them. You could say, this is what they're not doing, and this is what I can do. It's always going back to Eric Bischoff, who I've met a few times, interacted with a lot on Twitter, and I always respected him. He was the head of World Championship Wrestling as they competed with WWF. The only guy to beat Vince McMahon at his game. He did it for, almost, for over 2 years. And, he survived by, looking at what the WWF was doing, and he would do things differently. They did a tape show. Well, he's going to do a live show. They're going to do squash matches. He's going to do main event matches, that sort of thing. And that's why he won for 2 years, 83 weeks. And eventually, it caused WWE, well, now it's a WWE, to compete and improve their product. And eventually he did lose over time thanks to the AOL Time Warner merger. But, look to what other people are doing and do things differently. Fee compression, that's really the silent killer in this business. I used to call the 401k plan business the last good racket left, especially when we had revenue sharing and sub-TA fees and, lack of a fee disclosure. It was the last racket left. And that racket's gone. Thanks to technology, we have fee compression. I mean, I see it in my business. I haven't charged differently on my 401k plans to do a volume submitter plan in 25 years, and I won't. The reason I won't is because technology has made it quicker for me to knock out plan documents. Back in the old days, 25 years ago, the Relias software interacted with Word, and the formatting, everything was screwed up. Now everything is based on the internet. You don't need the software. It spits it out in Word. You can make your revisions quickly. I email documents now. I don't print them out anymore and go to Staples to bind them and mail them and all that kind of stuff. So it's just gotten a lot better, and a lot, it's quicker for me to do these things. And so therefore, I'm not going to raise my prices on my clients. You know, the nature of this business is, the revenue per plan is going down. Back in the old days, you could get, I knew an advisor by me was getting, 100 basis points on small plans. That doesn't work anymore. So while the revenue per plan goes down, the responsibility for advisors and TPAs and ERISA attorneys has really gone up. Fee compression really is that slow motion poison that weakens providers until they can't stand. And that's why when we had fee disclosure regulations, you notice that quite a few insurance companies said, you know what, this isn't for us anymore. We can't make money hand over fist. We're going to leave. We're going to sell our business to Empower, or, whatever it may be. And that's what happened. They couldn't deal with the change. They knew it. And that's what happened. I think it's important for plan providers to understand they should not stop. They should stop apologizing for charging a fair fee. You're not selling paper. You're selling a peace of mind. You got to make money. The plan sponsor doesn't want cheap. They want compliant, consistent, and calm plan providers. Service is more important, but fee compression is still a problem. Obviously, Secure 2.0 keeps on changing it for everybody. It's just, we got mandatory catch-ups. We got, all these other things. It's important to be that calm voice in the room and dealing with these changes. I always talk about, the paralegal who taught me everything I knew about ERISA, Marge. She said, back in, right after the Tax Reform Act of 1986, there were quite a few plan providers that just went out of business once they, mothballed DB plans for a few years and whatnot, and all these fundamental changes, especially 401A 17 and 31 and all those, changes that happened. A lot of plan providers went out of business. Just like with fee disclosure, a lot of plan providers just went out. And I think Secure 2.0 is going to hurt a lot of people because they're just not ready for it. They're not ready for these changes. And some will, and some won't. The alliances that matter. In the Hunger Game, alliances are everything. You can't go it alone, even if you think you can. If you're a financial advisor, you got to partner up with some good TPAs. If you're a TPA, you got to partner up with some good financial advisors. And, I'm an ERISA attorney, and I'm here to help anybody. Advisors are going to partner up with TPAs who actually answer the phone. TPAs work with record keepers who don't treat them like relics. Consultants find payroll providers who understand plain deposits are not optional, but you got to choose wisely. The wrong alliance can destroy you faster than an arrow to the chest. We've seen plan providers tie themselves to a platform that promised referrals but delivered headaches. Make sure your partners share your ethics, your responsiveness, and your definition of good enough, because when the DOL shows up, you don't want your ally hiding behind a tree. Technology, which is the capital's favorite toy. Technology, shiny tech, that's great. AI, robo-advisors, automated enrollments, we love innovation. But there's a difference between technology that replaces people and technology that empowers them. It's important as a plan provider that you should embrace tools that make compliance faster, communication clearer, and data safer. But never forget that it's all about relationships. It's always been about relationships. The nature of this business is built on relationships. That's the real product. Technology doesn't win clients. Trust does. Trust is the important thing. Your word is your bond. And I've never seen a plan sponsor a new plan because the dashboard had better color coding. It's all about, better service. The real victory, I always say it's integrity. You know, too many plan providers play a short game, cutting corners, hiding conflicts, or chasing rollovers like trophies. But the real winners in this business are the ones who do the right thing when nobody's watching. If you want to stay long in this 401k plan space, you got to build your business on integrity. It's not glamorous. It doesn't trend on LinkedIn, but it lasts. The providers who survive the Hunger Games will be the ones who tell the truth to clients, who fix mistakes instead of burying them. And you got to see people, participants as actual people, not just some silly head count. We're really entering a new kind of phase. There's a little quiet rebellion going on. A lot of small, mid-sized providers are realizing that they don't have to go out and act like the big ones. And that goes back to pro wrestling. Again, I always love wrestling. I always like business history. Vince McMahon, 1984, invades all the other regional territories, and he steals their stars, steals Hulk Hogan from Vern Gagne, steals Roddy Piper for Jim Crockett, and he invades. He starts running shows all across the country. That was a big taboo. His dad told him, Vinny, you do this, you're going to end up at the bottom of a lake. Of course, there was always threats. Nothing ever really materialized. What did the other promoters do? They didn't defend their own territory. They decided that they're going to run, shows in Vince's territory in New York and New Jersey, and that flopped. You gotta, you don't have to compete with Vince. You could compete with Vince by protecting your own territory, and those promoters didn't do that. You need to create boutique models that combine compliance and consulting in one voice. The future really belongs to plan providers who see themselves not as vendors but as partners who help sponsors make decisions they can defend in the light of day. The firms that focus on education, transparency, and proactive communication are going to win, even if they don't have $1 billion in assets. I don't have to compete with the biggest, ERISA attorneys out there. They probably make 5 times what I make, and that's okay, and that's good for them. I'm happy where I'm at, and that's my mortgage is paid off. I'm doing okay. If you're a firm that's going to focus on education, transparency, and proactive communication, I think in the long run, you're going to win, even if they don't have, even if you don't have $1 billion in assets. There's room in this business for everyone, and but it's not for every type of behavior. The people who want to cheat and steal, they got a short lifespan. Sure, they may, be like Matt Hutchinson and collect quite a bit of money in assets, but if you're going to steal, you're going to get caught. But, in conclusion for this, the 401k Hunger Games aren't really going to go away. The rules keep on changing. That's the beauty of the business. It doesn't stay static. The mergers are going to keep on coming, and the pressure is going to continue to rise. But if you're a plan provider and you're going to focus on value over volume, people over platforms, and integrity over income, you're going to be good. And, as Rocky said, time is undefeated. But getting up, that's how you win. This business, you're going to take your hits. I have. It's never been easy. But, if it wasn't a struggle, it wouldn't have been, that much fun. The measure of success isn't going to be about avoiding the punches. It's getting back up every single time. May the odds be in your favor. But if they aren't, as I say, there's no such thing as luck. You make your own luck. So I hope you enjoyed this episode of that 401k podcast. Of course, go to that 401ksite.com. Our events are up there live to sign up and all that stuff. The live events, $100 a head, $50 of multiple attendees from the same firm. And stay tuned for, a date for Washington. And of course, go to Amazon.com. Got a couple books for sale, including the fourth book, that 401k Plan Provider Handbook, which, talking about experiences and dealing with employees and just doing things differently, marketing and all that kind of stuff, and things not to do and whatnot. War stories here and there, but overall, uh, cut out the life story. Nobody wanted that. I get it. So I hope you enjoyed that book. I just did an interview with 401k Wire about it. Hopefully they run it. But tune in next week for another fun-filled episode of that 401k podcast. Take care. Bye.